I'd like to go ahead and open the meeting.
Okay, so the first item is the Semi Development Corporation, and we have Lisa Hack from LCDC here to give you the report.
Lisa, how are you?
Thank you, Mayor Martin and Commissioners. Well, thank you for having me tonight. I'm looking for others. Okay, great. Okay. Everybody knows each other. This would be a perfect opportunity to kind of start and talk about myself, but I even know the new one. So anyway, as you know, I have moved into the position of Executive Director for Leavenworth County Development Corporation about in May of 2022, so it's just almost a year and a half. I appreciate you all having me here, and I would say that for Leavenworth County Development Corporation, our mission is to facilitate the creation and retention of jobs and capital investment in Leavenworth County. We get to focus on, since there are a lot of people doing economic development in this county, we get to focus on the industrial industries, and we feel like those are the economic drivers. They're the ones that bring lots of jobs, and they occupy big buildings or construct big buildings that bring nice property taxes, and then they help spread the tax base for the community. We really appreciate our investors. We are about 72% of our funding comes from the public sector, and 22% comes from the private sector. The rest of it's from like fundraising, mostly from our golf tournament. And the Port Authority is our largest provider. The cities that provide funding are Leavenworth, Tonganoxie, Lansing, and Basehor, and the amount that we request from the cities is determined through a formula that takes into account property valuation and population. Our private sector, we have about 60 private sector investors, and our total budget's about $330,000. LCDC is run or governed by a board of directors. We have 23 board of directors. Then we have 5 executive committee members. There on the left, you can see our president, Jeremy Greenemeyer. He is wrapping up his first year as president, and then he will finish another year of as a president of Leavenworth County Development Corporation. And our executive committee rotates every 2 years through that role. We have 3 staff members. I am responsible for the operations of the organization and then also business attraction. Diana Dodd, who just celebrated her first year at LCDC, she is responsible for the business retention expansion program. And then, of course, our Mary Mack. We're so grateful to still have her. She's been here longer than anybody. She just keeps us in line, pays the bills, a little bit of everything, and she's very involved in our community. I'm so excited about the team that we have and what we're going to do together going forward. One of our biggest jobs is to market the business parks, the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park and the Gary Carlson Business Park. In 2023, we submitted the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park for 12 projects, and of those, 4 are still active. Then in this year for the Gary Carlson Business Center, we submitted 5 projects, and 1 is still active. We've been working with both Paul and Penny to look at ways that we can improve our marketing for these parks. We've met with developers from Hunt Midwest out of Kansas City, and also with Kim Young from the Kansas City Area Development Council's Animal Health Corridor. Through those discussions, we've come up with a couple of things that we could do going forward. One of them is to really get the message about our unique workforce. We have the military. This is not something every community has. According to the Census Bureau, we have about 9,000 veterans in this community, and they all come with skills and education that would be highly valued by incoming companies. We have military people that are transitioning out of the military, coming into the civilian world, and we have military spouses here, all that could be potential workforce for companies. We see that as a unique workforce, but we also have justice-involved individuals. Zephyr Products here in Leavenworth has utilized that program well. They have a product line inside the Lansing Correctional Facility where they're able to use inmate labor. And then they also for those inmates that are maybe getting ready to finish their time, they are eligible to be bussed over to Zephyr Products, and Zephyr is teaching them a skill, paying them fairly, and then they're reducing the recidivism rate. So we've got a very unique workforce. We're just looking for ways that we can make sure and get that message across to potential projects. Other ways that we market not only our parks but sites and buildings, anything in Leavenworth. First, we are contracting with Candid Marketing. They're a marketing company, but they specialize in working with economic developers. And one of the things that they have helped us do is with our website. I just see if that will work. Will that click over? Just a real quick showing of our website. Our website is designed to be easily used by site selectors. Site selectors are those people hired by companies to find the next location. And so you can see up at the top, there's a tab right there specifically for site selectors, and it gives information that those people are interested in. Right from the start, they're going to want to know what other, the leading employers, they want to know who else is investing in your community, and maybe how many numbers, the numbers of employees. They'll want to know about leading industries, incentives, demographics, reports and studies. One of the studies that we found very helpful and we've been updating every couple of years is the labor shed study. So one of the just information that's really good when we respond to RFIs and we can provide solid data to them about our workforce. And one of the pieces of information I think is quite interesting is 67.9% of our residential workforce is leaving Leavenworth County every day for work. And while that may seem like a negative, it's actually an opportunity for incoming companies that can capture that workforce. So another way is through social media. In fact, earlier this year, we sought expert advice from Commissioner Pittman over there. She came and did a class with us, and we've really been working hard to increase our social media activity. Whether anybody likes social media or not, it is effective. It's an effective way to market. And so Diana's been really helping a lot with that. She has added Twitter and Instagram this year, along with our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page. Email blasts. These are what they sound like. Email blasts that we blast out every month. 4 of them are newsletters, but the others we rotate to be email blasts about the parks. So this year we have sent out twice the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park. These are emails that just kind of talk, they'll do a brochure and they actually has a clickable link to the drone video. It has a few points about our labor and things like that, a picture, an aerial picture, and it talks about the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park. Like I said, we did send that out twice, and then the Gary Carlson Business Park once. And then, of course, it'll be time to rotate through those again soon. And that went out to over 300 developers and site selectors, both through the Kansas City regional area and nationwide. Mailers. It still does work to do hard copy, snail mail kind of material. When I was at a conference, one of the site selectors was doing a presentation, and they said that they really do try to read all of their emails. Unfortunately, they do get inundated with community marketing material. Sometimes that can get lost, sometimes they can get deleted, but sometimes if they get a hard copy of something, at the very least, they'll read it and look at it before they throw it in the recycling bin. So I took that, and we made a postcard for the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park, and we sent that out in the last couple of months. Networking events. I attend a lot of networking events, especially in the Kansas City region. Organizations such as our partners, Kansas City Area Development Council, CREW, which is a commercial real estate, it's a professional group for women, Metro Wire Media. Those organizations put together networking events where they invite developers, industrial, commercial, retail, and that's our opportunity to get to develop relationships with those people. The key for these is, as I am learning, just keep going, keep going. The more you go, the more likely you build those relationships. And people want to do business with people that they already have, with which they already have a relationship. The picture here is a conference that I went to in Bentonville, Arkansas. Site selectors were did a bunch of presentations, and Kansas was well represented. If you look to the left of me, you see a couple of ladies from the Kansas Department of Commerce. To the right is someone from Shawnee Chamber, and then to the far right is Jill McCarthy from KCADC. Let's see, I think that's it. R5 responses. I mentioned that stands for a request for information, and I receive those for projects. And just by responding, that is doing marketing for our community. Even though they may not consider us for a particular project, it's at least raising awareness of our community and our parks, keeping us top of mind. Take a break. This is a chart that kind of shows you where these projects are coming from. In 2023, we've had 52 leads. And leads come through sometimes professional RFIs that come through to my email, or it could be a call from a realtor. It could be a company that directly calls me. So anytime we get somebody interested in our community or asking for a site or property, we call that a lead. Then it becomes a prospect once I identify a place, a property, and then begins to work on that response. So we've had 29 prospects in 23. We've had one site visit, and then we've had one location. That is DSM for Manish, who is locating in the Tonganoxie Business Park. They're a supplier to Hills, as well as others globally. And so if you look to the far right, that column, if you see the word commerce, 19 of the 52 leads came from the Department of Commerce. And in parentheses, the number 25 is last year, so you can kind of compare. From KCADC, we received 13. And LCDC, that means they came directly to me, not through one of our partners, 20 this year. Any questions on that chart? It's not only important for us to focus on attracting new business, but it's very important for us to pay attention to our existing companies. And so we have a very robust business retention expansion program. That's what Diana does on a day-to-day basis. She meets with these companies at least annually. These companies will be like Great Western Manufacturing, Cereal Ingredients, Zephyr Products, companies like that. These annual visits help build trust. They also gauge the economic health of the community, and then they help us identify any issues that these companies might be experiencing. Our goal is to help these companies overcome barriers to growth. And so, according to the International Economic Development Council, over 50% of a community's capital investment comes from those companies that are already there and are growing. So it's really important that we help them. Zephyr Products is our big success this year. They did a pretty big project. They merged with their sister company, LPF Performance Coatings. They purchased 2 buildings that used to belong to Henke, and they are moving their Missouri operations here to Leavenworth. And then they're adding 45 new jobs, and that's a $9 million capital investment. That, I would say, they've expanded several times over the year. That $9 million is just this project. And we've been working with them before I got here on state programs and helped them, and they just keep investing back into their community. So we have put together a chart that shows the results from the BRE assistance that we've been providing. We've helped obtain funding and helped companies obtain funding and save money that equals $1.7 million. If you take all those numbers in that pie and add them together, it's about $1.7 million. And again, as I said, we do this because these companies are investing those savings and that funding that they obtain back into their companies. You'll see that predominantly the program that gets used is the HPIP, the High Performance Incentive Program. This program is a state program, and it is designed to incent those companies that are investing in the community, over $50,000 on a project, that they are paying above average wages to their people within their industry, and that are investing in their workforce through training. You'll see that obviously we've helped a lot of companies with HPIP, but that's the program that a lot of them are eligible for. Other programs that we have helped with are the Promoting Employment Across Kansas, PEAK, Grow Leavenworth County's gap funding loan programs, another state program, the Kansas Industrial Training and Retraining Grants, and then we have some small micro grants at LCDC. Any questions on that chart? One more chart. This is our LCDC 3-year impact. I would just like to show, well, at the top you can see anything we've helped facilitate. We've totaled that to 302 jobs. That's 264 new ones and 38 over the last 3 years, that is. The next line is the number of grants, loans, tax savings, all that number that we've helped assist companies save or obtain adds up to about $2.8 million. Then the next line are the two BRE capital investment and new capital investment totaling $537.4 million in the last 3 years. We've been working really hard this last year to make sure that these numbers are correct, that we have documentation. So, let me know if you have any questions on that.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Oh.
21, 22, 23, total capital investment. Well, new capital investment. What happened in 21 that it was so high? 461 million.
Hills.
Hills, that's it. Okay, got it. Thank you.
That makes sense to ask that question. Okay, is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, and then we have our events. This upcoming year, we have our annual meeting coming up in January. We hope some of you will be able to come. This is January 19th, 11:30 to 1 at the Riverfront Community Center. Our keynote speaker will be Kyle Vena, Vice President of, did I write that? Yeah, I thought I did. Anyway, Vice President of Anyway, he's overseeing the project, the American Royal project that's being developed. And so that's going to have some impact on our community, and I think that's really important. So I hope that you guys he's really excited to be there. I'm just so grateful that we were able to get him. And in fact, his wife is from our county. She's from Lansing, so that would be really interesting. Our golf tournament, quarterly in-person board meetings. This is new as of last year. 4 times a year, we're trying to put together very valuable presentations, and so those are moved around to different locations. Golf tournament's already set, September 13th. We're most likely going to do that at Fort Leavenworth again. We'll have our 2nd annual job fair. That'll be in the fall sometime, and then VIP event, we're now calling that Investor Appreciation because that's really what it is in November. And then we work very closely with the Leavenworth County Port Authority. The County Port Authority has a board of 7 that are appointed and represent the 4 cities and the county. They are all volunteers. LCDC does their staff work. One of the most important initiatives that they're doing right now is the Industrial Site Visioning Committee or Site Land Search Committee. And they are tasked with recommending a site or sites for a future business park someday, because a business park can take a decade to develop. And we know that although the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park is not filled now, it could be filled in one fell swoop. With one project that fits it. And so we don't want to be left without land. So we want to start that process. But again, they'll just be recommending. They've been going through a process of educating themselves. They've sought subject matter experts to talk about past park development, how it was done before, and then current project trends and information. They've had the utilities come in and talk about that. So they hope to wrap it up and hopefully in the spring sometime they'll make their recommendation. This is my contact information, and I also wanted to, since I've only done this a few times with you all, I kind of wanted to see if you have any feedback. If you want to tell me now or email me, please do. I just want to make sure, am I putting in the information that you want to hear or that you are interested in? Is there anything I can do to make this better for you all?
You're doing great.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate
Good
all the
presentation.
information. Lisa, just a couple questions.
Sure.
Back to your, kind of leads and RFIs and stuff like that coming in. How many of those right now are kind of like in-state, out-of-state that you see coming in, like from the Kansas City area or maybe surrounding, like Midwest region?
I don't know if I know that. They come from all over the nation. We don't know that information when we get those RFIs. A lot of times it's already called a project Bluebird or something.
Sure.
So no, we don't.
No, that's
get that
okay. I was just
information.
curious. Can you tell me of the open interest that you have right now on the 2 parks? You said there's like 4 at one and one at the other. When was the last, date of last activity from any of those companies?
So what I do is typically, I don't close it until I, hear directly from the source that it's closed or they've located somewhere else, or it's been about 4 months since I've heard anything. I will typically go back and, say, hey, have you heard anything? But if there's not been any movement in 4 months, then I kind of close it. I put it into a different page so that if it does become active again, I can pull it back out, so we're not forgetting about it, and also to keep track of things, but.
No, that's cool. I appreciate it. I wasn't sure on the RFIs because I was curious to know, since you're connected with Kansas City, more, and you try to do it on the national level where you saw, more impact and stuff like that, what was maybe generating more hits, for us here in Leavenworth. So I was just kind of curious. But it's no problem.
Interesting. I know we've been getting a lot of projects for that need a lot of power. I don't know if that's, just a lot of IT data center type things that's been coming in. That might have something to do with the federal money that's been coming out for things like that. That's been really interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Well, definitely wish you guys the best this year coming up. So
we really appreciate your support. We really do.
Can I ask a question about the Port Authority?
Sure.
We're one of 2, right, in the state? Or
Yes.
3? Okay. Where is that funding coming from? Is that
The
coming from
county. I should have said that. That all comes from the county.
And is that a mandate from the state that they fund that, or is that optional for them to fund?
That's optional.
But our city dollars does not go into the Port Authority at all.
No, our dollars go directly to the Leavenworth County
LCDC,
Development
okay.
Corporation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool deal.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Great
it.
job.
Merry Christmas. All right, state legislative agenda for 2024.
Right, Mr. Mayor and Commission, thank you. So this is something that we do every year about this time, ahead of the state legislative cycle. The 2024 legislative session begins January 8th, I'm sorry. And prior to the session, the League of Kansas Municipalities has released its Statement of Municipal Policy, which provides an overview of topics that could affect Kansas cities in 2024. Now, keep in mind that these are cities, large, small, western Kansas, Johnson County, Topeka. So it's a vast list. We'll get into that a little bit, but they try to capture everything that their members may have interest in. I think the most important thing, though, over my time and people, if you've worked with the state legislator, is you just don't know what's going to become a big issue in the session until the session starts. So I want to, up front before we get into individuals' issues, that my job is the best I can is to monitor bills and issues that move forward in the House and the Senate, bring those bills that have a positive or negative effect on the city to the city commission for opposition or support. Specifically, things that deal with the operations of the city is what I really focus on. And then per the commission's goals, staff will make every effort to bring those requests of letters of support or opposition to the commission at meetings, so we can get the buy-in and talk about the specific item that may be before the legislature. So as I mentioned, the scope is broad. The 2024 statement has more than 100 issues in 6 separate categories, inclusion of so many because of the scope of the membership. And they do 10 priority items, which were selected based on the potential impact as well as insight on issues that the league sees through their contact with the legislators. All 10 priority items are relevant, but I've highlighted 4. I really try to focus on what's relevant to the city of Leavenworth. We always start with home rule. Home rule is in the Kansas Constitution. It essentially gives cities, especially cities of the first class, the authority to set. You can be more restrictive than the state, just not less restrictive than the state, and gives the city government, the local elected officials, the majority of the control over how a city operates. Getting into more specific ones, one that was been on our radar the last couple of years is the countywide sales and use tax. The current formula, which has been in place for more than 40 years, to divide countywide sales tax and use tax is defined by statute, and it's determined by property taxes levied and population. For the city of Leavenworth, we are the sales tax generating engine of Leavenworth County. And the more advantageous formula would relate to the portion of the population, the portion of the sales taxes generated. The sales taxes are generated in the cities, and we think that that portion or that formula that automatically distributes funds to the city is the most appropriate. There has been some talk at the legislature, although not early in this session or before this session starts, about a change to the formula whereby the funds would go to the county and the county would determine the method by which they would be distributed out. So in that case, the city of Leavenworth could be generating 40% of the sales tax, but based on an individual governing body, you could receive none, 5%, 10% of the countywide sales tax back to you, back to your entity. I think this is really one county and one city at odds, but you never know where these things can go. So we just want to continue to advocate to adhere to the formula that's been in place for quite a while. And the league thought enough about it to put it in their priorities that we maintain the distribution formula as is.
Do you think there's action that?
I
they're trying
don't,
to
but
change it?
you never know how trading can go, or if, when you get into these omnibus tax bills that are sort of pieced together at the end, you worry that something like that could pop in. So I did bring that up to our legislators.
Mm-hmm.
The one on property taxes, there's 2, but one specifically, and this one is that all taxing authorities, cities, counties, states, school districts, special districts, community college should all be equally transparent and abide by the same limitations, restrictions, and requirements. Any additional transparency measures should not be burdensome or costly. The city encourages the state and local governments to work on making government more efficient and recognize the need to work together. Stop pointing fingers at each other, come up with a common sense solution, because the only people that benefit if that happens are the taxpayers. Yeah. And then there's some specific property tax ones I'll get into. And housing, I brought this one forward because recently we've had the low-income housing tax credit groups coming in, and I think we're all sort of excited by the potential projects that they have. I think Penny has another call tomorrow on another potential one. So the lack of quality housing and really attainable housing for seniors, but also just for anybody in the community, is an impediment for growth right now across the state. So the city supports programs that encourage access to quality housing. Entities in the city that have used state tax credit programs to bring diverse housing options, we support the use of those programs. And I bring it up, Mayor Pro Tem Pittman sent me an article that state auditors warn about the lack of payoff from the LIHTC program at the state level. So the state is selling these tax credits or granting these tax credits. So they're foregoing something like $250 million over 10 years in these tax credits. It doesn't affect us. It's foregone revenue for the state, not lost revenue. It depends on how you parse that language. But it's certainly the way that we've found most effective to get these developers to look at these projects, these duplex townhouse, these projects, and without those, I just don't know that we would have any kind of activity like that. So I don't think it's under any trouble right now, but continuing to say, hey, we need those to entice development to our city, I think is important. I did have just two others that weren't on the top 10 list from their list of 100 to bring forth. The first one is, I want to talk about is the local sales tax. So Leavenworth has deliberately decreased its reliance on property taxes over probably the last 10 years. And relying more heavily on sales tax. And any state elimination of sales tax authority would unfairly and dramatically affect the city's ability to provide core services. And what I'm really talking about is the sales tax on groceries. So in the session last time, we talked about the state getting rid of the sales tax on groceries, and there was a movement at one point to reduce or to eliminate any local sales tax on groceries. So this chart here is based on some assumptions, and it's not designed to give an exact reading, but we estimate based on census data, based on some data that Roberta has pulled, that based on household size, average percentage of sales of purchase of food from a family, the worst case scenario would be an annual loss of about $2.359 million to the city's overall budget, which is the equivalent of 7.76 mills. Now, I am absolutely not saying that if this happens, the city's going to raise the mills 7.76 mills. But what I'm saying is the city of Leavenworth, more so than a city like a Basel or a Lansing, who is more reliant on property taxes than sales tax, would be disproportionately negatively impacted if they did something to the city's sales tax revenue. I do worry that when you get into these, again, omnibus tax bills, that something popular could be, let's continue to reduce the sales tax on food even lower. Let's take the city's ability to levy 2% on their food sales, and thereby, for us, I would assume that we are about the highest sales tax reliance of a city of the first class. And so if you take such a large with a Dillon's, with a Price Chopper, and with a Walmart, and we believe Walmart's about 50% food sales, that would be pretty dramatic and pretty rough on the city of Leavenworth as far as our budget obligations.
So to be clear, when it goes to 0 at the state level, we'll still be 2%.
Yes, so right now, how it stands, the stair-step program would just affect the states, but there was language last time about looking at the local, because it's popular. You know, at the state level, if you did that, you're also then reducing that, but without impact to how does that affect my ability to pay police officers, firefighters, public works, you know, because the city of Leavenworth is primarily people delivering services. So I just wanted, I wanted to mention too that I've met with Representatives Proctor and Beeler, talked to Representative Johnson, and then Thursday I'm meeting with Senator Pittman, and these are just things that I'm sharing with them, just the impact that something like that would have.
Yeah, I was going to ask what the latest word on the street is. I mean,
So, and I'll hit that right after the last one, but I'll go ahead and hit it now. So my understanding is that this is going to be dominated by taxes, and they want to have something early in the session, but I believe that the question right now is it income tax? Is it sales tax? Is it property tax? What would be included in the package? Income tax, there's been talk about the single tax rate, so taking it to, I think it's 5.15 or 5.25. So that's been on the table. On the property tax side, we've heard about the 4% cap on property valuations. I think there's some problems there because there was maybe some pushback from agriculturally zoned property and commercial property. Maybe some concern about, are there unintended consequences if you cap residential property tax? Because would that then put the burden onto farms or put the burden onto commercial property? So that may be a stumbling point. I think we thought that one was, I don't want to say anything's a sure thing, but it had passed the Senate, it was going to the House. But I do have heard that there is some concern about from those interest groups about how that potential cap would impact residential and farm properties, or commercial and farm properties. And then on the sales tax side, it's can you accelerate the reduction of food tax? Do you look at the state's sales tax? And then potentially, do you look at the city's local sales tax on something like food items? So my message is, please at least get the information from us to make an informed vote. At the end of the day, a legislator's going to vote how they vote, but I would like them to have all the information they need from us, how it impacts our ability to serve their constituents, because they all represent the city of Leavenworth.
Do you 911 call them, or how do you communicate with them during session?
So I have a pretty good relationship with all four, and they're very responsive. And so I have their cell phone numbers. They're all very responsive on email. They do a pretty good job of keeping me up to date with, hey, this is coming, and stuff like that. So that's been good. And then the final thing I put on the property tax, used to be called the Genesis bill or the Health Club bill. Yeah. This was the sort of never-ending initiative to exempt certain industries from paying property taxes. This started with health clubs, the argument being that they're competing in some communities against like a YMCA or a community center. We don't really have that here. There's no apples to apples competition for Genesis. But the problem that inevitably comes up is expansion. It goes from health clubs, and then you get other industries that sort of end up in that same thing. And all that does is shift the tax burden for providing, again, and I always hate to say public safety, but it is. It's police, fire, public works, parks, onto residences or other businesses. So we're just asking that select industries are not granted exemptions, and that these bills have yet to succeed, but they do appear each and every year. So there are endless numbers of other legislative items. Again, I really try to focus on what's going to affect the city of Leavenworth in a given year. I mean, you don't know what's going to come up till it comes up. And the only other thing I mentioned to the legislators I've spoken to is the continued full funding of KDOT. We've benefited from a lot of cost share in grants through KDOT, and that comes from full KDOT funding. And so anything that the state does, and we don't have any indication that won't happen, but how important that is for a city of our size to be able to leverage local dollars by getting those 80-20 or 90-10 KDOT grants.
I know she didn't put LVATR on there.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, so LAVTR is in the state's municipal policy. What I've heard is either fund it or kill it. Right, is kind of what I think even the legislatures are saying.
Paying into it though.
If they should just end the program or end the state's sort of item that they exempt themselves out of every year and just end it, or go ahead and fund it. It's how much energy and effort do you want to put into that when there's other stuff that I think ends up being more immediate. But I still, I mean, it's important, and I know it's in the links, and it could be a lot of money. Well, it's more of a collection that they collect. We don't actually pay anything into it. It's a deferral of tax dollars to the state, but
it goes into that certain fund though. It doesn't stay here.
Yeah. And I don't know. I hear that it's really not an issue in other parts of the state that but I don't know. So it's in there. And if there's an LAVTR bill, I would bring it up, or certainly if the commission directs a more strongly worded statement on LAVTR. It's just not really on my radar because it's been out there for a couple years, and I'm more focusing on the immediate stuff. Yeah. But certainly
we just don't want to pay into something that's going into a fund that we're not getting back when the law says we should be, and we should be following the law.
Well, yeah, technically we're not paying into it. They're just taking it. It's like it's our taxes, right? And they're supposed to give it back.
Right. But they've only done it once. I think like the first or second year or whatever, and it just hasn't been since. So
it's been like 20 years since then. They turn around and they pass a law for that year.
Yeah,
we're not going to have to pay into it.
So.
Mental health. That was another one. I went through all of their legislative priorities. And we had that on there last year as I called out. We've been very happy with the efforts of the state and the state legislature about funding mental health. I mean, the Guidance Center has done very well with grants. We now have places to take those that need mental health. The city of Leavenworth is, through a grant, is working with the Guidance Center to have a co-responder, mental health professional to mental health calls. And so I think this is one where sometimes you need to tell the state legislatures thank you. But also if you expanded Medicaid, that would take care of a lot of people who are out there.
Well, that's the other one. That one I left to the governing body. It's certainly on there as under healthcare funding, but that I would defer to the governing body on that.
It's definitely a need.
I think so.
I support it.
What about another thing I'm worried about come up again? City elections, about opposing partisan city elections being partisan? Is that something the city
Right, so
stands on?
that started with the move of city elections from the spring to the fall. And then there's, of course, the federal law that does not allow military active or civilians to participate in partisan elections. We
Right.
certainly have a heavy population that could work for the federal government. And so we've constantly been on that they remain nonpartisan. I haven't heard anything about that one on this session, but you never know.
Okay.
Certainly one we'll keep a
Well, I
watch
didn't-
on.
yeah, I didn't hear
We
about
want
that.
the largest candidate pool possible. And
Right.
by doing that, all you're doing, whether you believe in partisan or not, for us, the reality is you're just limiting your
Really,
your
yeah.
pool of candidates.
Right.
We've got a lot of good candidates that, over the years, that have been on our boards and been on our school boards and our city commission that work for the government, so, and are very qualified, so we don't want to leave them out. I think it looks good.
So I'll just keep you informed as the session starts, as well as I could. And again, we do have my office has a really good relationship with our 4 legislators, and they do a good job of keeping me informed.
Cool.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Appreciate that. Next, we've got the reviewing of the food truck ordinance.
All right, this will be Penny Holler, the Assistant City Manager.
Like a safety.
Yep, sorry. I can get it for you from the back.
Meals on Wheels.
There you go.
We used to call it something different.
I will say I've never been made more hungry besides doing research for this presentation. So you're welcome to join me tonight on that. All right, Mayor and Commissioners. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide an overview on current city food truck regulations and practices. Since this is the first time this item is being brought to the commission, it's an information session and no action is being requested tonight. Food trucks are not a new concept, although they've been growing in popularity with revitalizing downtowns, and especially since the pandemic with outdoor dining. Most cities have been or are reviewing their regulations. Some of this was prompted by the 2018 International Fire Code, which added requirements for food trucks if they produce grease-laden fumes, and inspection is required. And the National Fire Prevention Association has also issued safety guidance about food truck parking in proximity to buildings. So there have been some safety considerations and other considerations that have prompted cities to look at the regulations. From a community aspect and economic development aspect, food trucks can be sort of a sign of activity, a sign of something fun, an activator for downtowns, unique when in conjunction with another activity. It's an easy way to feed a crowd and keep people on site. It also provides a lower cost way for entrepreneurs to enter the restaurant market without having to make the upfront investment in a brick and mortar establishment, although sometimes they do become brick and mortar establishments later on. So in Leavenworth, we have city ordinances that apply. They fall under ordinances for mobile food vendors. So it's food trucks are included. It would also be food carts. Those are really less common nowadays, but this ordinance would encompass them as well. So the ordinance is in your packet. It's chapter 22 of the city code. And you'll see that in order to operate a food truck or mobile food vendor in Leavenworth, it requires 3 things: a health permit from the city, a food handling permit, which is an online certification, and a mobile food vendor license. The mobile food vendor license is issued out of the city clerk's office. It's a simple 1-page application that's also included in your packet. You provide your driver's license for the type of vehicle, a copy of the food establishment license from the Kansas Department of Agriculture, and proof of commercial general liability insurance. And there's also a $60 fee. So according to the clerk's office, we have 9 licensed food trucks currently in the city of Leavenworth. For private property, there are location requirements included in the ordinance. That means that they cannot operate within 100 feet of a brick and mortar restaurant during posted hours without their written permission. and the truck and the line of customers can't impact street traffic, sidewalk flow, block ADA accessible routes, or restrict driveway access. So many of you are familiar with where this occurs now. I'll give examples. Black Belt Barbecue is often seen at the Fairfield Inn on Metropolitan. Wild Cactus Taco Truck can be found at Hibbett's Sports off 4th Street. And Amito's Halal Mediterranean Grill is usually parked at Denny's Produce about 2 blocks up off of 4th Street. And on Saturdays at the Sunoco gas station off Dillon's, by Eisenhower by Dillon's over in that area. So a lot of people will look on their Facebook or social media pages to find their current location, if they're on their regular site at the regular hours, or if they're attending a special event such as a county fair or something else. And food trucks actually have followings, so people pay attention, and if they're a fan of a food truck, will keep an eye out for where they're going to be located and travel to the food truck. We don't know if these are formal or informal arrangements with the property owners, if there's payments that occurs between the parties for running their business in the parking lot. That would be something we'd be curious to know more about. For city property is ordinance restricted. So, excuse me. Long and the short of it is food trucks can't park on city property, which includes right-of-way, streets, city-owned parking lots, alleys, or parks without permission from the city manager. So due to the complexity of what that looks like in Leavenworth, we usually handle that through the special event permit process. So some examples of that are Camp Leavenworth, where we have the food trucks, the area's closed off. That's a special event, so we have the food trucks there. And when that occurs, it follows a different process than parking it on private property. The Leavenworth Arts in the Park, you recall, that was at Stubby Park this year. They had food trucks, and that was part of a special event permit process. The Wilcott Brewing Oktoberfest, they had food trucks as part of their event. Again, these are when we run into the special event process. So typically, those go through a city review process. Several of us participate in those. So the city clerk participates to look at state alcohol regulations and whether other permits are necessary. The police department looks at traffic patterns, pedestrians, safety, business deliveries. The fire department looks at fire truck access and safety. Public Works looks at construction in the area, and other departments are involved as necessary. Those are approved by the city manager administratively unless they have a greater public impact, and then they come to the city commission. And if it's not in a park, this is tended to be done in conjunction with a road closure, which really tends to address or mitigate, if you will, the safety impacts for the public, not blocking intersections when folks are trying to cross, those types of things. And also addresses Kansas ABC alcohol requirements for that being a designated and confined area. Enforcement is through the police department if there were to be some immediate items or safety concerns. The ordinance allows the city manager to approve a food truck's request to park on public property without obtaining a special event permit. That authority is likely useful for something temporary. So in some ways, the challenge in Leavenworth is there'd be a lot of options that would come with that. So it may not be especially helpful to, excuse me, I'll skip where I was. The challenge in Leavenworth is we have a large downtown. We have 28 blocks, which is a wonderful asset for economic development, but can be a challenge due to size. It means there are a lot of locations that potentially one could park a food truck with different impacts at each location. So really any possible location would require the police review, the fire review from the city clerk's office on alcohol ordinances and similar things like that. as a point of comparison for other cities, Weston nearby has about 4 blocks downtown and some side streets, so really a smaller area, fewer options where one could park a food truck. Lawrence has about a 6-block downtown on Massachusetts Street. Nearby New Hampshire has some areas they do street events, and relatively, again, just a 12-block square radius, so significantly smaller number of options, which means potentially less impact in some of those areas. So while in Leavenworth, we might have greater possibility for negative impacts, we may also have opportunities for greater flexibility. There may be some places where food truck parking could be done with fewer impacts, including on city property. So we have had a few requests over the years for food trucks on a street or on city-owned areas separate from a special event permit because they don't want to close the street. So I'll give an example. A few weeks ago, we had a new-to-the-city food truck parked in an on-street parking in support of a retail establishment's event. They didn't realize they had the mobile food vendor license, but they didn't realize they needed city permission to park it on the street to support this retail event. So with appropriate review, as an example, is that something that might work in Leavenworth? So currently now that would be prohibited by ordinance without city manager permission. And most recently, Sean and Jennifer Wilcott, owners of Wilcott Brewing, submitted a request to have a food truck park outside their business to provide food to their patrons. They currently only provide beverages and would like food options to keep patrons on site. They do not plan to invest in serving food out of their establishment, and that request from Sean and Jennifer was included in your packet as well. To my knowledge, this is the first request for regularly parking a food truck on city property for the support of a business and not part of a temporary event or a sale. To be clear, an ordinance change would open up possibilities in other locations and other circumstances. The Wilcotts are suggesting this be allowed with a sponsoring brick and mortar establishment for on-street parking next to their business, which really brings up some questions about the use of private property. So streets and parking lots are generally taxpayer funded and almost always in Leavenworth have been used for traffic and parking. In the central business district zoning, there's no parking requirements, partially because large numbers of workers and visitors and residential tenants utilize the free public parking. There are a handful of businesses with designated loading zones near their building. They pay a $100 annual fee for that space for simplified pickups and deliveries. That'd be one of the closest things that we have currently to what the Wilcotts were wanting to consider. So to learn more, I looked at how food trucks are handled in other cities. As an example, Overland Park only allows food trucks on city property as part of a special event. Miriam had the same ordinance wording as Leavenworth, but specifies a city manager can approve something unusual on city property. Emporia allows designated spaces in one public parking lot on Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays. Potentially that's, less restaurants are open on those days, maybe to meet a need there. And other cities like Derby outside Wichita allow food trucks and on-street parking with requirements like not within 200 feet of an intersection and the line of customers can't block ADA accessible routes. So as you can see, there are various approaches and considerations. Should this be an item that the city wants to reconsider, we would likely be looking for some public feedback, including from our downtown and chamber business organizations. I've just presented a lot of information on food trucks. Are you hungry yet? That's the big question.
Yes.
I'm available to answer any immediate questions that you may have. As a city clerk, Sarah Bodensteiner, who also works fairly frequently with special event permits. And I would also note that it's a study session. There's not a public comment portion for tonight, though I'd recognize that Sean Wilcott is here in the audience in attendance tonight. So with that, I would open it up to the commission for questions.
Have we talked to local downtown business restaurants? Are they okay with, because that would be their competition.
Yep, I'd suggest to the commission that really the first step is would you like to pursue updating the ordinance, or are you open to reviewing what we currently have?
Yeah, I'd like to.
And if that's the case, then potentially staff would bring back some potential options for what that would look like, and that's where we could get some public feedback. I think if we said, who's a fan of food trucks as sort of an overarching idea, I think there'd be general support. I think if we would sort of look at some options, which would be regular parking in a spot, use of parking lots, a sponsor by brick and mortar build. I think when you get down to that level of specificity, you'll potentially get better feedback from the Chamber and Main Street and other downtown businesses. So right now, I know Sean has talked to a few businesses in his area that have been supportive of the concept.
Yeah, we couldn't just talk to restaurants, we'd have to talk to their businesses, because it's gonna,
Can we, since Sean is here and he brought this up, can we hear from him?
I'm game.
That's totally up to the commission.
Yeah,
Let's bring him
come on,
up.
Sean. Your game, man.
Yeah, he's been on this for a few months.
He's got a whole,
He came ready.
he's got a whole presentation there.
Let me go grab my computer. So I guess any questions on it all? I don't know what's in the packet. I haven't really reviewed. I mean, this has been a back and forth, kind of collaborative, really. Met with Penny 10 months ago or so for the initial talk around this potential topic. And my wife and I had reached out to a number of the businesses down around us, and more specifically around the restaurants in our area. So for those that aren't aware, that we do allow outside food in. We allow people to bring in any kind of products that they want, and have partnered with some of the restaurants that actually do offer delivery. And for us, it's been the 1, 2, and 3 most common requested thing for us is, hey, we would like to get food on site if we can. And so we make the collaborative effort, or the conscious decision, to not put a kitchen in. But, we're trying to build an atmosphere that's a little different than a restaurant. We were just talking earlier, if I were to walk into a restaurant and I see my brother and his wife there, we'll go say hi to them, and then we'll leave them alone so they can have their private meal. And for us, we're wanting to have that more atmosphere, that if you walk in and you see a family member, that you want to have a social collaborative effort. So it's a different atmosphere that we're trying to create. And so through this effort and going around some things, we have engaged other businesses, tried different options, and still feel that this is an avenue that we can bring to the community that adds support to it. There are some concerns that we wanted to take into consideration right out of the gate, which is protecting those businesses that do invest in brick and mortar and they pay property tax and things of that nature. So I believe our formal request is in the pack, and it kind of goes through and walks through what we've done and tried to incorporate those types of concerns. But thus far, we've been open-armed, very welcomed from the other communities and the other businesses that are surrounding us for this effort.
Question, has any businesses been opposed to this idea that you communicated with?
Not to our face. They have not.
That's a great response.
And I say that, so I've not heard of one.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna say that somebody doesn't talk behind.
No, understand,
That
yeah.
aspect, so, I mean, even right across the street, Tenpenny, we've engaged him multiple times.
Yeah.
They say, hey, and with this, actually, we've had the feedback from a couple of different restaurants in town of, people come to us because of what we do. We're not too worried about somebody else setting up shop, because our patrons come to us anyways.
Yeah. And so this just wouldn't be able to provide food after hours when Tenpenny closed. This is something that you want to do more consistently.
So our request here, and again, this is something that I think the right answer is a collaborative effort of what makes sense for the business district. Our proposal, and what we feel is one way, and a good starting point, is having a sponsored business. So you can't have a food truck just show up and park. It's more of, hey, you have to have a sponsored business that shows a collaborative effort down here. And so you have that scenario, and we've even gone to the point to try to protect those brick and mortar restaurants, to say, it doesn't make sense to where they park, it has to have during their hours. So you can't be open. For Royalcott, it would be, hey, you can park there from 4 o'clock until 9 o'clock. So you wouldn't be able to park there during lunch, because it's a partnered, sponsored business versus just a show up and park type of thing.
That's good. That's a good idea.
So I think there's a difference here between the city parking lot and private parking lot.
Absolutely,
like
so
the truck
private,
that
private
parked
parking
behind
lot, there's a few restrictions, but they can do it. You know, they're, like Penny mentioned, you can't be within 100 feet of a bricks and mortar, stuff like that, but that just is up to the business. These are lots funded by taxpayers and businesses. And
Right,
so
I got
the
it.
restriction has been, you can't use city-funded infrastructure to fund your business. And that's the theory behind not putting them in city lots. So those are for parking, they're parking lots, to serve the businesses. So businesses have places for their patrons to park. If you had 7 food trucks in a lot across from somebody, they're gonna say, I invested in this business, my patrons have nowhere to park.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I
A
think,
parking lot like the one over in the old Leavenworth Plaza, that's a privately owned parking lot, isn't it?
That's away from everything.
That's a food vendor parking
Yeah,
lot.
but there's one that goes up there and parks now.
So the one across
Yeah,
from
right.
Tenpenny, right? There's Gronus, there's Tenpenny, there's some other
Yeah.
businesses, and if you were
Sure.
to use that, they're gonna say, hey, that's a city lot.
Yeah.
Where are my patrons supposed to park? Now they're
Yeah.
walking, they're trying to find an on-street park, they're parking at Haymarket. That would be an issue with
Yeah,
using city
behind Country Club
infrastructure.
Bank, is that Country Club's lot or is that the city? Because there was, Chick-fil-A was in there for a while,
That's a privately owned lot.
privately owned too.
Yeah.
So, Sean, what are you, like an ideal world, what would you want right up front, because you couldn't use those parking lots, because those are, you're saying we own, the city owns those.
Right now, that's how it operates. Any
Right now.
city-owned lot or any on-street parking is not allowed to have a food truck unless it's a special use permit and I've never granted just a one-off. I would not feel comfortable doing
Right.
that, even though the city manager has authority, that just wouldn't be appropriate. So it'd have to be a special use permit.
Yeah.
For a special event, I'm sorry.
And you're not talking about on the street itself.
Yes.
So actually, our proposal would be that the request is really parking on the street parking right in front of our facility.
Right. But only when you're open.
Correct, yeah, only when we're open.
And there'd be some businesses that couldn't. Say they only in front of their property, just bad luck, you only have 36 inches of sidewalk or 48 of
Right.
sidewalk.
Depending
you
on
know.
the size, yeah.
But, 6th Street has a much wider sidewalk, or Cherokee has a much wider sidewalk. So these are the things that if you want to look at this, that staff would bring to you, looking at, no closer than X number of feet to an intersection, because you don't want to block sight distances or something like that. So not every business would be able to participate, because just on the physical location of where they are, we'd have to talk about Delaware. It's angled parking, it's on street,
Right.
what would you do? So you don't want to make it overly complex, but you also can't simplify it because there are different conditions that exist.
I'd love to just see, get some more information and at the end of the day, just see a good business case on,
Get
why it would
input.
make sense. And
Input
or
from
why, why would it
businesses.
not make sense, you know what I mean? So, definitely game though, to see.
So our hope is that John covers this, it's seen in social media, and we start getting the feedback, official feedback, the chamber, Main Street may be a little tougher right now. But then we get, individual businesses, residents, just saying what your thoughts are. The city right now is just looking at it. We're not taking a position either way.
And I think part of
I think
this
they'd be
too,
happy.
Penny, if we can, because you guys are collecting information, if you're able to, if you can note how many businesses you've talked to and what percentage is restaurant, what percentage is retail or other. If you can do that too, just to provide a good, covering of, okay, so it's not
Get more
one-sided.
specific on what's the information you're getting, where are you getting the information from, when did you get the information?
Yeah, if you can get the whys, why are you in favor of it? Why are you not in favor of
Oh,
it?
yeah.
and stuff like
Well,
that.
we've had calls on the St. Patrick's Day committee, for our parade about having food trucks on the parade and having us sponsor them, which we haven't done, and we wouldn't do that. That's up to individual businesses like yours, I think, but.
It's not limited to food. We've had, coffee and hot chocolate requests from retailers. So not that they don't serve beer, or that it's not a companion. It's
Right.
Saturday sidewalk sale. They're going to have a coffee and coffee and hot chocolate truck. That's a mobile food vendor. So currently you can't do that on city property. So there's more thought than just traditional food truck.
I think it's interesting to look at.
Can
See
you,
what-
can you set up like a form that they can fill out and get feedback? Or would you individually
Survey?
knock on each downtown business?
We would certainly want to rely on we pay a lot into Main Street. And this
Yeah.
is, this is
And
the
to-
Downtown
right, and to chamber,
Business
too.
Association and members of the chamber, so we would really.
John's getting the message out.
Really
to
hope
next year.
to, yeah, rely on those partners that we are our liaison to those businesses.
Yes,
But
definitely.
we can certainly come up with maybe where if you proactively want to come to the city to fill out something, then we can do something.
So they can be honest in front of us and behind our backs.
Reaching out to them, I think will work a lot better than waiting for them to come to us.
I know there's 300
You
and
say
we don't
them,
have a
yeah.
business license, so I don't even know who they all are. That's
Yeah.
another hurdle.
I think it'd be good,
At this
though.
point,
Yeah,
it's,
it'd be good.
I think, this is probably kicking off future discussions, right? So,
Right.
this consensus I'm hearing is, yes,
Get more
open to
information.
reviewing. It's one of those, at what frequency, are there locations, what are some of the considerations? So, I'd want to make sure that we do that well. We do that to get the best feedback.
Yeah.
Right, so right now, it's sort of, yes, city is looking at this, we'll get initial feedback, and I think as we have a future discussion with maybe some more specifics or some options, then we're likely to get even better, more granular feedback about by type
Sure.
and things.
Actually, we can reach out and word's gonna spread.
Sure.
And folks can come to us also. Yeah. So you don't make it just, it's gotta be this way or it's gotta be that way. Yeah, we're open to listening to you, even if we haven't reached out to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Food trucks in downtown Leavenworth? We're exploring it.
This policy's not just for the downtown, would it? Or is-
So that's
would be-
correct, so the way the
for the
ordinance is
city.
right now, it is all city property, is how it reads, and that's defined, that includes parks, that's alleys, that's on-street parking, that is parking lots. If it is city property, it's currently under the ordinance, so.
That doesn't mean though, if you did this, you couldn't limit it to the central business district. Because you'd
Yeah.
have to think about, parks are a different animal in some ways. And there's no sponsor,
Right, is that-
adjacent.
is
Does
that-
a sponsor have to be adjacent? There's not a bricks and mortar. It'd be just the food truck setting up at the park to take advantage of the crowd at the park,
Right.
without a special use event.
I hate delays,
they'd
but
have to get
unfortunately, it's
special
probably gonna
use.
get delayed a
Well,
little bit.
No, it's the right way to do it.
This may be a dumb question, but the ice cream man?
They're exempt, they're
Okay.
exempt from
even
some
got
of
one?
these
Yeah, in
specifics.
here, it
Yeah.
It's a
doesn't apply.
separate,
Okay.
they have a separate
They don't come down my.
Chapter
cereal.
five.
They have a separate license because
Section
they're
5.
prepackaged ice cream, so they're handled differently. Now, if
Okay.
he were scooping it out like old school style, he'd probably be treated like a mobile food vendor because it's all prepackaged. Your bomb pops and all that. It's
Okay.
it's handled separately.
So they're not part of that 9?
Correct.
Okay.
Good question.
Prepackaged hot dogs can park that.
There you go.
Delicious.
Businessman. I like to think it.
All right, so we'll keep looking
Yeah.
and we'll
thank you.
bring some more information back to you, King.
Yeah, great discussion.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Penny.
Okay, moving on to the 4th Street Downtown Project Update.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, I apologize for having to add this. The bid opening was last Wednesday, and KDOT has to have some information from the city by January 4th, so this item had to come before you tonight. As you know, we've been talking about the reconstruction of 4th Street through the downtown Choctaw to Seneca for quite a while. Initially, the city got a $1 million grant to just do mill and overlay on a 2-block section from Choctaw, just 2 blocks north. We wanted to expand that through the downtown, so the city commission at that point said, okay, the city is willing to put in up to $2.5 million. As we started to look into that, we started to look at some of the infrastructure, we started to look at some of the streetscape improvements, and we ended up at a project that was that the engineer's estimate was $5.2 million. That's $1 million of city funding, or $1 million of state funding, and $4.2 million of city funding. That $4.2 million of city funding is set aside. Those were federal funds exchange dollars over multiple years, capital projects fund, so that is set aside. We hoped that when the bid was opened, and again, this is a KDOT project, KDOT puts this out to bid, it's a KDOT process, that we would get a large number of bidders and that the bids would maybe come in at or below engineer's estimate, and it was actually the opposite. So Wednesday when the bids opened, the low bid, once you factor in construction inspection and the contingency which would be required on a project of this complexity with the depth, you're looking at a project more in the range of $7.5 million. So what does that mean? That takes the city's portion from $4.2 million to needing to add about $2.5 million more. And for some context, $2 million is what we spend citywide on pavement each year. So total city investment of $6.5 million is more than 3 years of citywide pavement. So before I get into our options and some good news, the question is, what happened? Why is it so high over the engineer's estimate? So we were lucky enough to be able to speak to most of the bidders. It was largely the uncertainty. The infrastructure is extremely old. They were worried about liability. They were worried about the neighboring business owners. They built in stuff that we didn't anticipate, like vibration testing, so that they could sort of cover their bases before the project started. It's not a fun project. At the end of the day, there's also issues with having to keep lanes of traffic open, it being a state highway, it being a truck route. We had a somewhat tight traffic schedule or construction schedule, even though March to November seems like forever. For the amount of work they had to do, that was a pretty accelerated schedule. So all that came into the bid coming in over budget. So now what do we do? My conversations with Brian, and today we met with the principal of the engineering firm, and we believe the city still has $4.2 million. That's $1 million a block. Certainly we can get darn near the same project. There's some cost savings removing it from a KDOT project. KDOT has inspection requirements, they have lane closure requirements, they have publication requirements, they have other requirements that we may not have. We would forego the $1 million, but in speaking with them today, we believe we can get nearly the same project for within the city's budgeted funds right now without adding any additional city funds. So that means the roadway improvements, the intersection improvements, the humps, the sidewalks, the ADA, the curbs, the decorative dividers between the curb line and the sidewalks, new signal poles. Essentially, the project's identical. So what are we missing? And what we won't do is the complete reconstruction of the stormwater and sanitary portion. But we do have a plan for that. So I'm going to turn that over to Brian and then come back and finish out with some of the project details.
Yeah, underneath the road right now, we have a very large, about a 72-inch old stone arch, which is what our stormwater flows through. It runs right down the middle of 4th Street from the south to the north end of the project. And actually underneath that is our sanitary sewer line. So to access our sanitary sewer line, we actually have to get into the storm sewer and then unbolt the manhole lids which are in the bottom of the storm sewer pipe. The sanitary sewer is actually in decent condition. But when we looked at, hey, we're removing all this pavement, 4 lanes of concrete pavement, we're regrading the intersections to get the humps out. We have to recompact the material that's there. With that truck traffic, compacting that we'd be doing, we were really concerned about the condition of that old arch. All that vibration, all that work we were going to be doing, is that going to damage that arch? And so what we decided early on, if we're going to remove all the pavement and open up that roadway, it made sense to replace that storm sewer. And if it made sense to replace that storm sewer, we ought to replace the sanitary sewer that was underneath it. And so the project grew from just a pavement project to doing all that infrastructure underneath. Mm-hmm. But we feel we don't have failures in those systems. They're old, but they work. And so we have some options independent of reworking the roadway to do rehabilitation on that storm sewer structure that will add life back to that structure. So that's one of the things we're looking at is what can we do to the pavement, not remove it all, localized at the intersection and a mill and overlay on the rest of the street, keep that arch structure intact, and then come back after the project, do any repairs to that, and line that pipe. We feel it would definitely add a lot of life back to that system.
Is it KDOT that's requiring that to be taken out, or is KDOT is requiring more than what we think we need?
No, that was something in the development of the project. We came to the realization, initially it was just doing the pavement. We're going to remove the concrete pavement that's there and put in a new road. But in doing that, the risk to that infrastructure below was significant. Mm-hmm. So while we're doing this, it makes sense if we're going to remove the entire roadway, building face to building face, let's improve that infrastructure underneath.
And when we thought we could get that for 5.2, that's when we worked with the commission, hey, we're asking for more, but that undoubtedly is the right thing to do in the long run. But when we got to where we got, with the funding how it is, then we thought, are there other options that safeguards the public infrastructure, that makes the improvements that are needed to Fourth Street, including all of the streetscaping and those kind of things for the funding that the city already has. At some point in the future, whether it's 25 years down the road, that stone arch is gonna have to be replaced.
That's what I was gonna ask you, how long?
Right, so we
the
talked,
period do you
yeah, we
think
talked
it
with
lasts?
the principal, and we talked with Brian. We're gonna still be able to do the storm inlets, raise the bottoms, change all that, improve those. And then there's a couple different methods, and one that we've focused on a little bit. I'll turn that
Yeah,
over to
and we
Brian.
used to have a lot of communities use it. I used it when I was in Topeka. It's called spin casting cement. And basically that comes in with specialized equipment. It's a cement mix that you actually spin on the inside of those structures. It actually adds structure back to it. And it's called spin cast. That's something that we did to a 72-inch pipe in Topeka with great success. So it's something we can do. It adds life to the structure. Does it get us 25 years? Does it give it 40 years? It's hard to tell.
How old is that arch?
100 years,
It's
125
in
years
the
old.
beginning?
Yeah,
It's like those little stone arches you've
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
over
yeah.
the, you know.
You can't always do
elsewhere
that.
in the city.
If the pipe's too small, you can't do that, because then you start getting into capacity issues, and that is the central vein of stormwater throughout the downtown. But it being a 72-inch, you have quite a bit of room to play with to be able to do that spin cast concrete.
What's the good news?
The good news is, there's a couple, and it's a good question. So the good news is, we can absolutely do this in 2024. It is a quicker process without KDOT involved. We have the design team that did this, the survey work's done, the utility work is done. All the pieces of this are in the design and the construction stuff that we've already paid. There will be a cost to them redesigning a bit of the project, of the design engineers. It's gonna be a more attractive project to contractors, and we know that. So we talked to some who didn't bid, and they said it was just such a complex, deep, and there's enough work out there right now that they don't have to have these projects. So, and we've given the design engineer the city's number. We won't have to, we looked at taking some funds from economic development, stormwater, sanitary, sidewalks, curbs, and piecing together the additional city funds, but at what cost? At what cost of deferred maintenance or anything like that? So, we would probably have a revised design back to you, be able to bid this pretty quick and start the work in the summer. The project span is also shorter because you're not digging 14 feet down into the ground. You're gonna probably end up doing some full intersection replacements to get rid of the humps, but the sections in between, you would just do a deeper mill and overlay of a new surface.
And the buildings along the street, I mean, there was that issue with the tying in of the building to the street. That will
Right.
be the same as what we've already.
That was part of some of the reluctance from the bidders too, is reconnecting everything to all those adjacent buildings, the stormwater and the sanitary. They would be responsible for that, and that's a lot of
I thought they
interaction
wouldn't
with
be
individual
connected
groups.
because that would have less vibration that would affect the buildings.
I'm talking about the storm and sanitary that are already, the water conveyance systems, yeah.
Got it, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And just to be clear, the initial bids came back higher because we kind of changed our scope a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. I mean, when we originally talked to KDOT to get that grant for the 2 blocks, it was a small project for 2 blocks. The quote that we had from our engineer at 5.2 included all the work that was actually bid. But just again, contractors bid that uncertainty. I mean, the work should have been, in our opinion, about $5.2 million. But when they're building in the vibration testing and all these different things, and when you go down 14 feet, you got, that roadway, and you got 12-foot sidewalks in the near face of these buildings that were built in the 1800s. And so they're going down 14 feet, they're putting in a 66-inch pipe.
Sure.
5 feet away, they're putting in a sanitary sewer that's actually even deeper than that pipe. They basically have completely wiped out the entire road, building face to building face. And that made them extremely nervous.
No, I appreciate that. The reason I was
I
asking
can see that.
was just because it's like, if we knew that ahead of time when the assessments were done, and then all of a sudden people got nervous after the fact, that's what I was trying to find out. Like, did they just change? Oh, now we're nervous about it. Like,
So
how is that missed?
Yeah,
there is
they
what I'm
baked
asking.
that in. The engineer baked it in as best they could of the uncertainty. I think it also is, there's a ton of work right now. Two of the contractors who actually turned in full bids do a ton of federal work. And I know that they did not necessarily expect to get it, because they have so much other federal work going on, and then they did get it. And so I think there is so much infrastructure money out there right now that is easier work, that
Yeah, that makes sense.
worked against us a little bit.
Gotcha.
Because we were pretty confident with that 5.2 number with some conservative estimates built in.
Well, you hit the mark a lot, that's why I was curious, yeah.
And that storm sewer pipe, those costs for those things, I mean, our engineer actually contacted several contractors and said, we want to put in this 66-inch pipe and these are the conditions. What kind of cost per foot are you going to have? And so those are the numbers they put in their engineer's estimate. And so we felt pretty confident when we were getting numbers from, contractors, hey, these are the prices. We felt pretty good about the numbers. But
Sure.
at the end, it
Yeah.
didn't work out
Okay.
that way.
No, I'm just curious. I appreciate that because it's just like,
Yeah.
that irks me,
Yeah.
honestly, because like, okay, well, because that could go on and on. other
Yeah,
projects,
and nobody
too.
wants that to happen because then all that work that's gone into this,
Sure,
and so basically what we need from the commission is, that's the staff's plan would be essentially the project as outlined, but we do have to let KDOT know. So if we do this, I just want to make it clear that the 1 million from KDOT goes away.
Yeah.
That was part of that, and it's
Ding
timed
that?
out. No, absolutely not at all. They'll just reprogram it. The city has existing funds now for the entirety of the project. We're not asking the city commission to commit any more dollars than you've already committed to this point. And then the project would go forward as we've explained tonight.
Sounds
Yeah.
good to me.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
Good with it.
appreciate the plan.
Contractors were worried about accepting what's it called?
The liability.
Responsibility, but the liability of doing damage to the foundations of buildings. Under this, is that going to go away, the worry about that?
We would not be excavating the roadway.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not worried about the city accepting that responsibility?
I think there's inherent risk in
That
any
liability.
project in the downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just incumbent upon us to work with the contractor, we're insured, they're insured, and take those conditions into consideration.
We got an old town. You never know what's gonna happen.
I know. That's why I'm wondering who's going to accept the liability.
Well, it all depends.
Cool. So bottom line, everybody's going to see pretty much the same result. It's going to look a little bit different underneath, but no extra cost.
Right.
Except for additional.
But it'll still work underneath.
Work in, yeah, absolutely work
So-
underneath. I don't want the message to be that we're not gonna do anything. It's absolutely gonna be, they call it rehab in place. So you'll be able to access it and do those methods, and work in 2024.
Still
I'm talking about
March.
anywhere from
That's
25
the
Get
way
it done.
Yeah, but it's a smaller window, so
Hard to
if
tell.
it starts
I'll be
in May
dead
or
by
June,
then,
it'll
so.
still be done at the same time. But yeah, the goal is to get it started as fast as
Still meet the
possible.
deadline.
Yeah, so.
Thanks, Brian. That's
Yeah,
great.
thanks for going back to the
Thank you,
drawing
sir.
board and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool deal. Okay, well, that kind of concludes items for tonight. I want to go around the horn, beginning with Mr. Kramer. You got anything?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
All right. Ed?
Everybody have a safe, joyous holiday season. Have a Merry Christmas and a great New Year. We won't be here next week.
A Merry Christmas. We wish.
Thank you.
Pittman?
Just want to thank Paul. I think I've been sending him probably 2 to 3 questions a day. I learned today that the city actually has a boat dock. I didn't know that. So
Yes.
And you can tune into 100.5 on your FM dial to listen to music at the Mayor's Lighting. So lots of questions. So thank you, Paul. I hope I'm not annoying you too bad. Merry Christmas to everyone, and have a happy New Year, and enjoy your holidays and your family time, hopefully.
Cool deal. Nancy?
I repeat what everybody else says. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. I think a lot of our international officers will be traveling, and wish them the happiest of holidays and New Year as well.
Cool deal.
God bless. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's. And Joy to the world. Now, God bless y'all. Y'all have a good one.
Peace on earth.
I did just have one question, Paul, maybe if we could add it to another study session. I made a reference to the business license and things like that. We kind of talked about that. We really don't have any system in place right now to manage everything we have in place with all of our local businesses. And so if maybe something could be put together at a later meeting on that, I don't know if it's possible, if we could use any of the transient guest tax monies to fund anything there. If there were enough benefits or something like that. So
We
just.
can certainly put together what it looks like. And it's not, again, you make a really good point. They're sortable, so you could send it to all the restaurants in town, all the businesses with the downtown address, all the business, we just don't have any of that data right now. We can't reach out to specific businesses. It is pretty unique not to have a business license for a city because you have no way to get in touch directly with your businesses. And by sector, by size, we don't have data to give.
There's a lot of,
The
data benefits,
data piece is huge. Realtors want to know, housing developers want to know, and we just don't have
Why
that,
don't we have
that data. It's just traditionally not been something that the city has wanted. It's sometimes looked at as another license or another permit, sort of a government
Another
type
fee.
thing. But
Another fee.
but there is a ton of value in it.
Yeah, if there's a way, that's what I was saying, if we
Yeah.
can use money from somewhere else or something like that, possibly transient guests, I don't know, but,
I think it would give us a lot of information too,
Yep.
Oh, sure,
If we're recruiting businesses, do we want to recruit a business that's just like 5 other businesses, to our town?
We can speak, when Lisa was here earlier, we could definitely speak to the workforce that's here really
I
well,
know Main Street, that's a big thing for them is recruiting businesses. That's, when I was there, it was what I spent about 75% of my time on, but we had, we made lists of businesses downtown, not really of the whole city, so that would be good to have.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we will see you in 2024. And with that, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Don't need it.
All right.
Oh,
Forgot.
oh.